we learned to shut our hearts down in response to the world around us. Softness, authentic sweetness from our hearts is what needs to come pouring forth. In a more balanced state, the feminine would not need to show up with so much fierceness. When you call on your own mother tiger to come up and defend your heart as a cub, you are able to transform the energies of ancestral trauma. And this is the only way that we can move into a new and evolved collective and way of being. Do not forget your power. Hi everyone, thank you so much for coming back for a third video this week. I just wanted to come on here really quickly before you go to the channel and share with you that this channel is much different than the previous two. And it was a very different and new experience for me as well in the channel while I was receiving the energies and information. You'll notice that the channel and the video itself, the pace of it is much slower. That is partially due to the fact that while I was in channel, the way that the energy was coming through was very concentrated and very intense. And so while I was trying to relay the messages that were coming through, the visualizations and the energetic messages that I was receiving were very easy to read and to receive. It was the translation of putting them into words that was very challenging for me. And so the pace of it is just a lot slower. And it actually feels appropriate. When I finished the channel and I was reflecting on everything that had come through, one of the pieces of guidance from one of the beings that you will hear, Kuan Yin, was to meditate in a very specific way. There was a visualization that she brought through. And so the video itself actually feels very meditative. I felt very meditative in the experience because of how mindful and just slowly everything was coming out. It felt very different for me. And so I'm sure it will feel different for you upon receiving this message. And so I wanted to tell you that. And I also wanted to share that in response to the guidance that came through about the meditation, I have created a track that is the guided meditation that was given to us from Kuan Yin. That track will be available on my personal website, alunianoel.com. So please feel free to go over to that and check it out after you see this channeling. And don't forget to leave any questions, comments. I do love to hear from you. Enjoy. So what would you like to tell us about the softness of feminine courage? So there are actually many faces of the Divine Mother here, as well as Source is also present. So it seems like there are a few different takes or perspectives that are going to come through about this topic. So we are starting with Kuan Yin, who is one of my personal guides, has been for a very long time since I was a child. She has been with me. So let us see what she has to say. So she is talking about two things. Showing up with compassion can be an act of tremendous courage because it calls on us to be soft and also to be in a position where we could be perceived as, quote, wrong or weak in the eyes of the other person. And she is saying that it is, of course, not a weakness. It absolutely is not, she's saying. She's saying that compassion is the greatest strength of the heart. And it is one of the greatest medicines that our collective and our earth need at this time. Because she is saying that mixed in with compassion is the softness of grace. The other piece that she is highlighting is about sweetness, actually, and I want to understand more what she is referring to there. She is giving us an analogy of when we offer, she is showing like a tray of cookies. When we offer a tray of cookies or sweets to someone and they reject it, it feels harder than someone rejecting, she is showing to contrast a tray of nails. So something that is inherently unpleasant or not beautiful, it is much easier to accept the rejection of that compared to something that was made with love and that is sweet. So when our own sweetness shows up in the world and it is rejected, it can feel much harder to accept that rejection, and it can feel much more painful in our hearts because it is coming from the heart rather than something that is possibly coming from the mind. It just doesn't hurt in the same way because it's not coming from the same tender place in our beings. And it is also not an expression of our authentic hearts. And so it does not feel as painful. But when our pure, sweet authenticity shows up unfiltered and it is rejected, that can be a very painful experience. And many of us, she is saying, in childhood learned actually to shut down the sweetness and to not show up with our hearts for this very reason. So whether it was in our family or in our school, with friends, not because it was intentional or done maliciously, but simply out of ignorance and a lack of understanding, we learned to shut our hearts down in response to the world around us. And in some ways, this did keep us safe, she is saying. There is a defense mechanism that has and did serve a purpose. But at this time, with what we are welcoming into the world, softness from our hearts and the authentic sweetness from our hearts is what needs to come pouring forth, she is saying. She says to turn the waters to honey so that everyone can experience sweetness. She is that for a meditation? She is actually giving some guidance around a meditation that we can do. When we imagine, if we are sitting and we imagine water flowing through us, so you could imagine it flowing through the top of your head or your crown chakra, and then pouring out through your heart. So you can do that a few times. And she is saying also you could do that through the entire chakra system to flush the system out of kind of old waste or old energetic debris. But then she's saying to imagine that instead of water pouring out of your heart, that you actually have honey pouring out of your heart. It is a way to soften the heart. And since honey in the physical world is actually a medicine, she is saying that it is also a way to, in a way, act like how honey can act on the skin, almost like a salve. But energetically in the heart, when we imagine that, it can soften. What's the word that she would use? What would you say? It will ease the tenderness that comes from your heart opening. So energetic honey medicine, that's new for me. Okay. Thank you, Kuan Yin. Is there more? Okay. Who would like to come through next? Okay. So the next being, she is new to me. I know of her, but I have never actually connected with her in this way, one-on-one. She goes by Lilith, and I really don't know a lot about her. She is saying that she is a representation of the Dark Mother in a way. She is giving the analogy of the dark side of the moon is what her energy is, the unseen, specifically the feminine unseen. I see that her colors are deep crimson red and black, as well as gold and white is also there. So she is expressing a contrasting perspective, it feels like, to what Kuan Yin was sharing, which is about the fierceness of feminine courage. And she is giving the analogy, she's showing me a mother tiger. She is giving the analogy that a mother tiger is fierce and her fur is soft. So both of those are possible to hold. Both energies are possible to hold in oneself. And just as a mother tiger cleans her cubs, feeds them, plays with them, there is deep softness in that. And that is entirely feminine. And the mother tiger has the capacity to draw on a ferocious and fierce protection and courage when the time calls for it. And she is saying more about how that would be expressed in the human world. So let me take that in. So this is a bit tricky to put into words. One example to articulate what she is trying to show me energetically. If one carries people pleaser energy, it can be very difficult in the face of someone who is saying something that goes against your values or asking you to do something that you do not agree with. It can be very difficult to not feel shut down and to express the truth of how you really feel, your genuine desire or the idea that you had around something. And that is the time she is saying to call on this fierce courage so that you can express fully what is in your heart. And there is still softness around your expression because it is from the heart. So she is saying to trust this expression and to not be afraid that this expression is going to hurt someone else, because it is part of your evolution to share what is in your heart. And certainly, she says, it is part of the collective evolution to release identities such as a people pleaser, as that comes from societal conditioning is the energy that I'm getting there. As well as she's saying it is more complex than only societal conditioning, because it also is rooted in ancestral trauma many times. So when you choose to be fiercely courageous, when you call on your own mother tiger to come up and defend your heart as a cub, you are able to transform the energies of ancestral trauma. And this is the only way that we can move into a new and evolved collective and way of being. Okay, so she is also offering a practice. She is showing someone sitting in a dimly lit, maybe with a candle lit room in front of a mirror at nighttime. And this person is what it looks like they are practicing what they would say. Okay, she is saying it is not actually about practicing what the words that one uses. It is about looking at oneself in the mirror and seeing oneself as a soft and fierce protector. So drawing on that energy from the heart, from the gut as well, from deep within, and then pouring that out through the eyes, so that when one looks upon themselves, when you look yourself in the eyes, you see your own inner fire and the fierceness that lies within you. Interesting. She is sharing that part of the reason why the feminine is needing to be so fiercely protective is because of the imbalance of masculine and feminine energies. So she is saying that in a more balanced state, the feminine would not need to show up with so much fierceness. It is because of the imbalance on this planet at this time between the feminine and the masculine that the feminine is being called to be fierce. And she is saying again, not in a destructive way, and it is not in an unnecessary way either. It is a fierceness. It is the same fierceness of a mother to protect her children. And at this time, the children that we are protecting is the purity of our hearts. Just as children are pure, it is the purity of our hearts that we must protect. And when we choose to show up with fierce feminine energy, we are adding that to the collective, and it will help to balance things, because what it will allow is for more soft feminine to also show up in a non-distorted way. It will allow the soft feminine to show up. And in a way, it will, how do I explain that energetically? The best way I can say this, she is showing the collective as a sphere, and then she is as a circle. And energetically, I can see the energies of the divine feminine and the energies of the divine masculine. And what she is expressing is that when the divine feminine shows up fiercely, it is like it is holding a place for the divine masculine to step into. So over time, she is showing how parts of the circle are replaced by divine masculine. And when the divine masculine learns how to She corrects me, remembers, not learns, remembers how to show up for the divine feminine and show up in the way that is balanced. The divine feminine will not need to hold that fierce boundary in the same way. And they are showing that the divine masculine is this ring on the outside, and the divine feminine is a ring on the inside. That is very clear visual. So the last thing that Lilith has said is that she says to remember that the choices that you make every day, the practices that you have in your life, the evolutionary steps that you take every moment do not only change your life, and they also do not only change the life of your entire lineage, which they do, they change the course of evolution for the collective. We are so much more powerful than we recognize and than we give ourselves credit for. The recognition of this power is part of how we bring the divine feminine back into balance with the rest of the world. Do not forget your power, she says. Thank you, Lilith. Okay, the final part of this message is coming from Source. And what I am being told is that at this time, there is a very strong connection to the divine feminine energies. And it is important for each of us to find and uncover within our own selves and through the guidance of others that we learn or find the face of the divine feminine that we resonate with the most at this time. It will change over time, but finding that expression will give you guidance as to what aspects of yourself your soul is asking to come online. Sitting with pictures, whether they are images in your mind or images outside of you that you can contemplate or gaze upon, will help to bring the energy of that particular aspect more into your field, and it will help strengthen you overall. There are countless and infinite expressions of the divine feminine, and they do live within our heart, they say. Okay, that is the end of this transmission. My energy stays with me, your energy stays with you. That was a lot to take in. That was really big energy. Do make sure that you ground yourself after receiving that. That was a lot of energy that came through. And I welcome your feedback, your questions and comments down below. I also welcome you to ask any questions that you may have about topics that you would like me to ask about. It is important to hear from the collective and from you about what is on your heart and where you need guidance. So please feel free to leave that in the comments below. I'm going to make sure to do some extra grounding right now. Can feel that I need it. I hope you find some ways to do that. Drinking water, moving the body, or just going on a walk can be some good ways to do that. Thank you so much for joining me today, and I will see you all next week. May you remember your magic.